Today's question is, what's the smallest amount of power you've seen go to someone's head?
Slightly off topic, but a definite abuse of power that backfired hardcore. So my dad opened up a chain of scrapyards that eventually ended up being wildly successful. My dad is also a person who has the life motto, never give your kids things because they will turn out to be entitled brats. Needless to say, me working at his most successful scrapyard did not lead to a high-paying position or fast rising through the ranks. It was so bad that this manager named Ryan, yes, this is his real name because no fucks given, actually had to suggest to my dad that it was time to put me in management after 4 years of busting my ass harder than any other employee and even being the one to train him in a year prior. Pops didn't trust me running companies at this point in time, which in hindsight makes sense. So I finally get this management position where I had a small crew on second shift. It was 3 weeks before Christmas, and I tell my dad I was looking to go balls to the wall on Christmas spending so I could finally feel like I've given back to everyone that was important to me. I was a bit selfish prior to that point, I'll admit. So I had picked out all the gifts I had wanted to give my girlfriend at the time and the rest of the family, around $2,400 worth. I was about 21, so this was a big amount of money for me at that time, and I was determined. Instead of being an entitled prick like most rich kids, I simply asked if I could work tons of extra hours so I could earn enough money to buy these gifts. He says, well, you better get busting your ass and talk to the other branches and find out if you can get some overtime, and cause you're gonna need that time and a half for a Christmas list like that. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, I worked 80 hours a week and totaled 160 hours, with 80 of it being overtime at multiple different shops that I drove all over to get to. I told everyone, including this Ryan dude, how ecstatic I was to have made enough to get everyone everything they wanted and enough left over to treat myself. Everyone congratulated me on the work ethic, and it finally came time for me to go and collect my money. So now it's payday and 2 days before Christmas. I head to the main office to turn in my hours sheet, and the secretary tells me she needs to make sure it's okay with Ryan before she pays me. At this point, I'm a little confused as to why she needs to do this, as it has never been common practice before that point. So she brings my punch card to him, and he comes back over to the office and says, I'm not paying you this. Mind you, my dad just gave him a $68,000 truck that he just bought but didn't like anymore, and it had like no miles on it. I of course asked what the hell he was talking about. He responds by telling me he isn't going to pay me that because it's more than he made, so there's no way he's going to authorize me to cash it out. I am absolutely dumbfounded at this point, but figured maybe there was some confusion or something. So to clear the air, I explained to him that my dad and everyone else at multiple shops okayed me working these hours, and they can all verify that I did in fact work every minute that I said I did. Don't know how much you guys know about recycling metals and the ins and outs of the business, but I busted my ass for that check. I could barely function from exhaustion. He then explains to me that even if my dad okayed it, the fucking owner who hired him, he was not cool with it, and the most he would pay me was the hourly wage with no overtime because otherwise I would make too much. Since y'all don't know my dad, I feel I must inform you he is a hothead. At this point, my blood is boiling. We all hate the guy that pulls rank or acts entitled, but I had no choice cause this guy was a straight entitled, power-hungry, money-grubbing, unappreciative asshole. So I inform him without raising my voice or acting irrationally that when the guy who signs his checks tell him to pay someone, he probably shouldn't argue. He tells me I don't give a shit, this isn't going to fly. I let him know I'm going to call my dad on spot if he doesn't pay me, and he can work it out with him, but not until I tell my dad every word of the conversation. He tells me he doesn't give a shit, my dad doesn't have a say. I chuckle and call and inform my dad everything. My dad ended up yelling so loud to put Ryan on the phone after calling him quite a few names that were less than professional, and you would have sworn he was on speakerphone, but he wasn't. I hand the phone to Ryan, and to this day I'm not quite sure what he said, but I've never seen a guy so red. He walks back into the office and pulls out my $3,500 cash and never really spoke to me again after that. Fucking entitled prick. And to think the whole time he knew that most of this money was for other people in the Christmas spirit, and I worked harder than anyone else to earn it. "Oh, I'm sorry, you working 40-hour work weeks doesn't make as much as me doubling your work hours, you poor fucking thing. Should I go fetch your brand new Chevy Silverado 2500 HD loaded plow truck for you that you didn't spend a dime on?" That's the worst I've ever seen someone let power get to their head. Ever. Elder, my dad had me train a manager and gave him a brand new $68,000 fully loaded truck at a company my dad owned. That then later refused to pay me the authorized overtime after I worked 2 80-hour work weeks to buy my family and friends gifts for Christmas. All on the grounds that I would make more than him, and it wasn't fair. Mind you, he only worked 40-hour weeks, and he basically did nothing but sit in a little office every day, even though that's not at all what his job responsibilities entailed. The guy took advantage of his power in every way possible. Even wanted to hire a hot secretary, so he had something nice to look at. Dude was married, and ran to my dad about every little thing I did, even though he talked shit about the company in front of me on many occasions. Dad chewed his ass out. I got my overtime, and everyone had amazing Christmas gifts. I used to work at Best Buy. We had a uplift good-for-nothing super skank whose sister also worked at the store and was equally a super skank. She wields next-level bitch powers and also knew how to manipulate upper management, so she was basically impervious to getting fired, as was her sister. So this girl starts out in operations, which is the registers and customer service. She's super slow at her job and ducked up shit all the time. I had to constantly cover for her mistakes because fixing her issues and pretending they never happened was far easier than better for my mental health than explaining to management why their perfect angel cost the store $80 because she returned something as new that was actually defective. Eventually, the entire department turned on her, and she decided to move out to sales to avoid the awkward moments with her coworkers. She totally sucks on the floor. She misquoted prices and told customers that she could work a deal, and then the customer would expect better pricing on a TV. Something we simply didn't do. So she would manipulate everyone by saying, "If you get a credit card, I'll get my manager to knock $100 off this $800 TV." So naturally, she'd get credit apps, which upper management loved because that's literally the only numbers they cared about, but store metrics showed huge numbers in erosion because of all the price adjustments. Eventually, it catches up to her, and she's forced off the sales floor. At the time, Geek Squad needed a drone to prep computers for the holiday season that had bloatware removed and antivirus installed. They moved her there, and she was technically a Geek Squad agent. At the same time, a management position opened up which she felt was entitled to her because of all the departments she worked in. Eventually, she convinced herself she had the job after a manager put her down easily by saying, "I can't consider you a manager because you don't have experience." This literally translated in her brain as, "It's yours if you can show me your managerial skills. So pretend to be a manager and let's see what you got." So quite literally, she didn't have power but thought she did. Since my area was next to Geek Squad, she started giving me daily performance reviews. She wrote up people and would put the forms in the GM's office, who she sucked up to, a lot. Worse yet, she would tell people how to do their job. Mine included, despite getting kicked out of the department because she sucked at it. One day, she donned the headset and pretended to the manager on duty while the manager took their headset off to deal with a personnel matter, to which everyone mocked her for. Just before new manager was expected to be picked, she had people fill out a petition for her. No one signed it. This all went on over the course of a couple of weeks until the new manager was announced. That did not go well with this girl, even though the person who was picked very obviously qualified for the job. Her sister threw a fit and bitched out the GM because her sister was promised the job. Her sister ended up quitting shortly after because she accused another employee of raping her. But this girl still worked there for a few years, and I ended up transferring to Geek Squad and was a full agent. Ended technically above her. She was still an imaging monkey. Alright, so I was a PA, production assistant, the lowest of the low on a film set, for a Kelsey Grammer submarine comedy called Down Periscope. One guy was given the meaningless title of Key PA and decided he was going to help wrangle background extras for this big exterior shot we're working on. Now everyone, including the extras, knew that the camera was probably framed in a medium close-up on the principal actors, who were doing a scene way down at the end of a dock. Nonetheless, key PA guy took it upon himself to start blocking out whole entire scenes of these background extras. I'm talking crowds of people. You guys over there. Your families of the sailors who haven't seen your husbands in 6 months, and you run from the bus to the fence. But you guys are cadets who get in the way, and you guys are arguing about which car has the right of way. Then all you kids start clapping because you see a big doggy pulling his owner so fast he trips over the leash. Like second unit on a Michael fucking Bay movie. He had these people doing his made-up little scene over and over and over. He'd yell at them, tell them they did it wrong, and reset them back to one. To start over. Madness. I walked by the guy and noticed this was going on and said, "You know the camera is pointed the other direction, right?" He just laughed and said, "I know." This is so stupid, and it still pisses me off to this day. So my company ran a contest where the winner got $100. I won. No strings attached. Use the $100 bucks to get whatever you want. The thing I wanted most was new office supplies. A new pair of scissors, a new tape dispenser. Stuff like that. I made a list of items and approached my coworker. You see, she was in charge of our company POs, and if I went through her, I could get $120 bucks worth of office supplies for $100. $100 even. Down to the penny. Including shipping. "No, I don't like the colors," she said simply. I thought she was joking. Her office supplies were covered in Minion stickers. I think we can comfortably rule out aesthetic appeal as a reasonable denial. Also, it's not her money. It's not for her desk. The rules of the contest said I could buy anything, even alcohol or a Visa gift card. There were no stipulations as to what color stapler I was allowed to get. I assumed she told a joke and it just fell flat. A week goes by. I ask her what the status of my order was. "No, I'm not going to run that through. I think it's tacky. And I think it's stupid that you won." I bet if I ordered fucking Minion shit, she would have approved it in a heartbeat. Wish I could have a nice revenge story, but I just ended up using my money for groceries instead. I have a big group of friends who go to the local park on a regular basis and play outdoor games and board games. I brought a set of lawn darts as well as numerous other games. We were deliberately in a part of the park where no other people were around for at least 100 meters. The patrol drove up in a little cart. This fussy man got out, hooked his thumbs in his belt loops, and shambles over to me like a Western cartoon character. The only thing he was missing was hay in his teeth and a hat to tip back. He tried to confiscate my lawn darts as they posed a danger to the public. I pointed out there was no public around outside of our group. Then he went with the line that I, the little lady, was using them incorrectly and posing a danger to myself. I was 38 at the time, and I am 5 feet 10 inches. I towered over his little diminutive self, and lady is not the first word I would use to describe myself. I asked him on whose authority he was confiscating my games and to show me the bylaw that allowed this. I even pulled out my phone to look up the park rules. He started to get flustered, and by this point my friends were openly laughing at his routine. He backed off and drove away. Later that day, when one of us made a complaint at the office, we learned he was actually the park maintenance man, garbage collector, and had zero authority. He wasn't even supposed to be driving that particular vehicle. So, I'm not proud of this. That needs to be said. In high school, my boyfriend slid into home base, literally, this is not an innuendo, and sacrificed his ankle for a home run. I drove him to the emergency room, and when his mom arrived, I volunteered to go get food to escape her and feed his teammates. While waiting for my pizza at a nearby joint, the kind with games and shit for kids, I decided it would be so cool if I brought toppings with me. I was known as a bit of a rule follower, so I thought snagging the glass pepper and cheese shakers would make me look cool. I don't know. It was fucking stupid. So I casually put them in my purse and internally applaud myself for being such a rebel. Then it happens. Mississippi. Are you stealing those? I turn around to see a kid, who was probably my age but seemed much more authoritative in that moment, looking rather indignant. He pointedly grabs my purse and gazes at the contraband, then looks at me with true disdain. I mean, you'd think there were dead kittens in that bag. He then proceeds to lecture me about theft. I was scared at first. My first criminal act was not going well. But then he starts talking about these condiments like they are housed in his great Nana's priceless glass cheese and pepper shakers. He starts threatening legal action, and now I'm mortified. I break a rule, and my first ever police report will say, stole cheese. After several minutes of the sternest talking to ever given by a motherfucking busboy, the manager comes strolling by. The kid stops him to tell him what I've done. He is glowing with self-righteousness. Like this act is the one that will finally show his worth. They may let him run the ticket counter, or dare I say, work the actual register due to his courageous act of stopping yet another thief from taking red pepper flakes. Well, he was wrong. The manager looks at him, and with all the passion that can be mustered by a middle-aged man managing a pizza chain with skee-ball machines, he shrugs and says, "Kay, did you get them back?" Busboy proudly holds the sacred objects for his manager to see, nods the affirmative, and waits for his praise. That praise does not come. His manager simply shrugs again and mumbles, "Kay." Busboy is bruised, but not broken. He then enthusiastically suggests to the manager that the authorities be called and charges filed, so that I may be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This woke his manager up a bit. His eyes widened, and he looks at the busboy and asks, "Are you insane? You got the shakers back. We are done here." It was a hit for sure. Busboy is shocked. This is simply not how he saw this playing out. He thought this was his ticket out of cleaning puke out of the ball pit. But no. As he suffered through what I'm sure were flashbacks of the weekends of 8-year-old birthday party soda experiments and the messes those make, I realized that I was never in danger. This busboy was riding so high on the perceived power bestowed upon him by his pizza overlords I had been scared. But he had no power here. As he regained composure and tried to save face by letting me off with a stern warning, I just laughed. I took my pizza, and no condiments, and I left. I'm pleased that I do not have a police record, even more so that I don't have one that mentions Parmesan cheese, all because of the most power-crazed busboy in history. Years ago, while working at a pizza place, our manager had to leave on a family emergency and left a girl in charge until one of the other shift runners could get there. And he lived about 45 minutes away. In that 45 minutes, this girl who was left in charge actually called one of her friends and hired her, saying she was the manager now, wrote me up for putting too much cheese on a pizza, and actually told one of the drivers he was fired because she didn't like his attitude. When the shift runner got there to take over, this girl also told him not to worry about it, and she had things under control. End result, her friend was not hired. My write-up for using too much cheese was torn up. The fired driver, who never left the parking lot, kept his job, and she quit a few days later because we were unprofessional and the manager played favorites. I worked in a hotel/restaurant in college, and everyone working there, aside from higher-up management, were college students. Anyway, I worked in the restaurant as a busser, and the restaurant manager left the job and was replaced by a promoted server. The new manager actually said, "Well, there are going to be some changes around here." I've never seen a head grow so quickly, but he was also incredibly unprofessional. He walked around like a king in his castle, flirting with female servers and bossing around the male employees unnecessarily. He lasted less than a week, I think. Maybe 3 days. He threw an ice cube down the front of one of the rather busted new waitresses, again, a college girl, and she flipped out and cried and called her boyfriend. Boyfriend threatened to come in and beat the manager's ass. And everyone already hated him, so as he walked around looking for support that it was all in fun, and we all goofed off, he found no port in the storm. Everyone just shrugged and said, "Yeah, that's tough, man." The story evolved over the course of the workday until I heard someone in catering say that he'd stabbed her in the tit with an ice pick. Anyway, I found him on the dock, shakily smoking a cigarette at the end of the day, his eyes red from stress, his face pale with fear, saying over and over again, I just don't know what happened." And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video, leave your like, share if you liked the video, and lastly, don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye-bye.